Before we get started, if you haven't yet, please like this, give us a 5-star. It helps us get it out to more people. And if you enjoy this podcast, please ensure that you share it on your social medias and tag us in it. And we're back, season 2 of Common Unity. I'm Jason Fox, and we're looking forward to continuing bringing some great guests to you within this community. I hope you enjoy the show. Get into it.
Let's do it.
Episode 36, and the voice you just heard is Daniel Prince. I've met Daniel Prince actually through our program that we run, Action Membership, or through our Business Action Curve, and he's come along as a member there. And this dude's got some incredible stories, but we've touched over them. I've watched a couple of videos, some alarming ones. Not too good at tightening up wheels by the looks of it, but outside of that, yeah, he's got a pretty cool story, and I'm looking forward to learning all about it. So welcome.
Sure. Thanks, man. Thanks, guys. This is primo.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. And sorry, Nick, you are here. We'll update the intro because Nick's the superstar that's doing all the editing and all the back work at the moment. So it'd be very rude to not make him a permanent fixture. So welcome on board.
Cheers. Thank you. Excited to be here.
Yeah. I think you're actually holding the podcast together now. You're the glue.
Making it happen.
I'm excited to hear Dan's story. I see he's wearing a McLaren shirt.
Yeah, I thought I'd look the part.
I've never seen you look so good, mate.
It's amazing what you can find on eBay.
There you go.
Yeah, even in your size too, which is pretty impressive, because normally when you get it off Alibaba and stuff like that, they come up 2 sizes too small, but you ordered it right.
Exactly.
So where do we start? Where you born, mate? That's an easy one.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. What a journey. So born in Hawke's Bay. So
nice.
Yep, from the Bay. I'm the youngest. Got an older sister, Kirsty, and when so my whole family's from Hawke's Bay, which is pretty cool. And when I was 5, my dad got an opportunity to move to Auckland. We went for it, which was kind of big, coming from like a smaller place and move into the big town, which was pretty cool. Spent like 27 years in Auckland.
Sure.
Massive opportunity. Went to intermediate college in Birkenhead.
Yep.
And intermediate, enjoyed it, liked it. It was kind of like, as soon as I hit college, I was kind of like, it started checking out. I was kind of like, this is not for me. Like, not enjoying it, not keeping up. Daydreaming, a lot of daydreaming.
Same as me. I think it's real common in males. It's like, as soon as I hit that age, I just wanted to be riding BMX, and I'm seeing it in my son now. Yeah. Like, he's just finishing his first year at college. And pretty much the only stuff he's enjoyed was building a hammer and like metalwork, which they call something else now, but he's made a hammer and a screwdriver from scratch, and like using the lathe and stuff. He's loving everything else. Like, what'd you do today? Oh, I polished some more of the hammer. So is that all you did? It's the only thing I care about. Okay.
Yeah, and like I was very similar, like woodwork, like random story. For Mother's Day, we made like a wooden spoon, that like a beautiful engraving, and like I love Mum, and it was beautiful, but like the same, like spent months sanding it and gave it to Mum for Mother's Day, and it lasted about 4 hours, and like Mum like whacked my bottom with it, and I realized I created the weapon that smacked my own bottom. So it was kind of like, here, Mum, here's Mother's Day.
It's the first place I thought it was going.
Yeah, and it was just lasted 4 hours, and I was like, oh man, like I spent so much time on this.
What'd you do to deserve the whack?
I don't know, probably just being cheeky.
Did it leave it an imprint on your ass that said, I love Mum?
That would be cool. Should have got like a tattoo done.
Like a bruise?
Yeah. So like, if we look at kind of like, I'm 15, 16 at this stage, and used to catch the bus home, and in Birkenhead, there's like a rally shop.
Yeah, nice.
It was called Bygone Autos at the time, and right next to a place called Fraser Cars, and like they had these exotic race cars, rally cars, everything was modified, everything was just incredible. And walking past that every day, on the way home from school, I was like, man, like that's pretty cool. That's different. That's something special. Like you don't see something like that. Yeah. And that's kind of weeks and weeks and weeks went by, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna go in there and just say hi and can I sweep your floor? And literally I walked in there and I was like, hi, I'm Daniel. I go to Birkenhead College, and these guys are pretty cool. Like, any chance I could just sweep the floor or just hang out? And yeah, they're like, yeah, sweet. So kind of like 2 or 3 days a week after school for an hour, I'd just go there like sweeping the floor and just soaking up all this knowledge and learning bad habits and bad language and how much beer you can drink on a Friday.
Which is important at 15.
Well, yes, very important. And that's kind of like, school wasn't happening, wasn't for me, wasn't enjoying it, just checking out, and kind of 16 at this stage. And that rally shop was like, hey, what do you think about an apprenticeship? And I was like, yeah, like, heck yeah. So kind of had the conversation with my parents, and I was like, want to leave school? And they were like, we saw that coming. And my parents gave it a good nudge to try and like prolong it as much as they could, because you know, they could see I was struggling in certain areas, and they were pushing and pushing, but there's only so much you could kind of push. And so Dad was happy because it was an apprenticeship, like you're getting a skill, you're learning, so that was quite cool. So made it all happen, left school, and started my apprenticeship. So it was a mechanical apprenticeship. Basically 3 to 6 months in, I used to get paid with a check. So I was allowed to go to Glenfield Mall for an hour and bank my check, and checks actually started bouncing. And that's when I learned, what does this mean? And they kind of had the conversation with me, and they said, oh, you know, we kind of took you on, we can't quite afford you. You know, rally cars is like a luxury. So, you know, we're going to have to let you go. And I was kind of like, whew, you know, I've told my mates, and, you know, got my apprenticeship and everything like that. So for a 16-and-a-half-year-old, like my first ever like failure, or my first ever like, I was telling everyone, like, look at me, man, like I've made it in life. Like, you know, I'm getting $243 a week, you know. So that was kind of a bit of kind of kick in the pants. And Mum and Dad were kind of like, oh crap, like now what? So ended up just mucking around for half a year, like had a carpet laying job, and kind of going nowhere. And then there was like a pre-apprenticeship course, so I did that for 6 months, just learning ins and outs of being a mechanic. So that was quite cool. And then from there, through family friends, got a phone call one day, and it was his name was Graham Sharp, and he said, you know, hey Daniel, I know you have a bit of a rough time and you're pretty interested in motorsports, and got a contact, you should give him a call. And his name was Stephen Giles, and this man's pretty important in my career, or where I got to. And so Stephen Giles just arrived to New Zealand. He's originally a Kiwi, and he went over to McLaren in the Formula One team, and he was chief mechanic for McLaren. And so...
And what era is this, when McLaren was still a New Zealand company, or when it was in UK?
It was over in the UK, so
based over
like, can't remember what drivers it was back then. We're going back probably 20 years ago.
That might have been is that the most winningest McLaren?
Yep.
After Anton Senna's or whatever.
Yeah,
it was?
kind of like...
Yeah, they had that at the Giltrap show.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
It's got a Ford engine in it.
Yep. So
Yeah.
probably
McLaren,
a few more years after that.
Yeah, sure.
It will come back to me what drivers it was. So yeah, Stephen had spent 10 years with McLaren, came back to New Zealand, and he started creating his own race team in New Zealand, and kind of got a hold of him and said, hey, I'm Daniel, got a passion for motorsports. And he was kind of like, I don't have anything available at the moment, but if you speak to Owen Evans, rang Owen Evans. I was sitting down in his office in Penrose. Owen Evans is back then was the current land speed record holder, and he owned one of the largest panel beating paint businesses in New Zealand.
This is post crash.
Just after his crash.
Yep.
I've met him.
Yeah.
I was going to say, he's got a bung hand, eh?
Yeah.
His arm went out the window while he was flipping the car.
Yeah. So I'm 17 and a half, like couldn't even legally drink. And here I am sitting in an office with Owen Evans, and he's kind of like, what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to be a race car mechanic. Like, love it. It's me. You know, I've done a pre-apprenticeship course, done this and everything like that. And he goes, do you want the job? And I said, well, what is the job? It's kind of like, well, you know, my son's Mitch Evans, Simon Evans, and, you know, they're heavily involved in motorsports, and we need mechanics to, help maintain the race cars, and there's a team of guys and XYZ. And I was like, yeah, cool. Yeah, let's do it. Okay, well, is there any chance you could fly to Christchurch in the morning? I said,
Do it.
yeah. I said, well, the race team's currently down in Ruapuna. We could put you on a flight tomorrow. You could make it for the race meeting. And I said, yeah, cool. Haven't even spoken to my parents yet, and kind of like left the meeting, and I was like, yeah, this is happening.
Yeah.
Cool. And literally went home, packed my bags, went out to the airport, flew there, arrived at the racetrack and introduced myself, and everyone knew who I was, and Owen had sorted it all out. So
They're expecting you.
Good.
yeah, so I spent about 4.5 years with Owen. So I was full-time in motorsports, looking after race cars, maintaining them, travelling around New Zealand. So we were doing single-seaters, Porsche, a little bit of go-karts. We were quite heavily involved in the Toyota Racing Series.
Yeah, cool.
And this is where the crossover happens between Stephen Giles and Owen Evans. Stephen and Owen worked quite closely together. You guys have probably heard of Mitch Evans. So we were quite focused on progressing his career pretty quickly. So doing the Toyota Racing Series with Mitch, and I was able to work shoulder to shoulder with Stephen Giles, ex-McLaren. So working late nights, early mornings. We were away for like 25 weeks of the year. You eat, sleep, breathe, work together. So brushing shoulders with a man like that is you learn skills, what to do, what not to do, how to build a race car. So that was pretty cool.
And high pressure, right? It's not like, it's smoko time, guys. I watched that video, which you'll probably get to, but the speed in which everything's got to be repaired. If you've got 30 seconds to change tyres and get the thing back out there, or punch a guard out, or duct tape it back together, or whatever, it's all go.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I suppose that would teach you a lot of lessons that you take into even your business now, which we'll get to right down the track. But you'll carry those lessons on for life, won't you?
Yeah, and going back 20 years ago, like, it was very unique to be full-time in motorsport. So like, as a mechanic, I knew I was quite fortunate, and to be working with these people and brushing shoulders with sponsors, and so yeah, it was pretty cool 4 years. Some crazy parties.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine there's, even to this day, a lot of full-time teams that travel around like that. They have the money to keep all those people racing year-round.
Yeah, for sure. And between Owen and the Giltrap family, like, yeah, they've done incredible things for New Zealand motorsports and really helped a lot of young people, get overseas. The Nick Cassidy, the Earl Bambers, the Scott Dixons, the Liam Lawsons. Like, it's pretty cool. So 4 years went by. I'm kind of like 21, 22 at this stage. And I remember in Manfield, it was a Monday after weekend of motorsports, and Stephen said to me, he's like, what do you want to do? You've been doing this for 4 years. You're just going to do this forever? Or like, what do you want to do? And I said, man, I want to go to McLaren. I want to go to Formula One. Like, that's me. That's where I'm kind of stepping up to. And Stephen's like, if you want to do it, I can make the phone call. If you want to go, I can make it happen. And I was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. And at that stage, like, I had met people that were very similar to me. Like, they were heading overseas and working in Formula One. So it was kind of like, when you're in that circle of race car mechanics, that's kind of the pinnacle.
And it seems achievable because you've seen other people do it, and like, well, they've done it, I'm going to go do that too.
Yeah, and I'll never forget it. Stephen said to me, I can make it happen, but I need to leave something with you to make sure that you understand the commitment you're about to make. And I said, yeah, sweet as. Like, man, I'm 21, like, let's go. And he said to me, Stephen used to actually employ the mechanics, so like qualify them, when to join the race team, and who are you, where you're from, what have you done, and all that. And he said, I didn't give a shit who you were, or if your dad was a somebody. He said, if you weren't a mechanic, a fully qualified mechanic, I don't want to know about it. And I was kind of like, at that stage, I'm not a qualified mechanic. I've got all this experience. But what Stephen was trying to say is, like, you join a race team, it all falls over. You're sitting in Europe or in England, and you know you've got no qualifications. And I'm like, man, you sound like my dad. Like, I want to go to McLaren. Like, let's do it. Let's go. And that kind of like hit home a little bit, where I'm like, you know, Stephen's been there, done that, spent 10 years in McLaren. Like, you know, I've got to respect what he's saying. And like, took a few weeks to think about it, and I was like, and told my dad, and of course my dad was like, you need an apprenticeship, mate, you know, get an apprenticeship, get something behind you. And I was like, yeah, whatever, like, I want to go to McLaren. So I decided not to go, and that was like a big that was a tough call to make. And spoke to Owen Evans and said, hey Owen, like, this is what I've got in front of me, what do you think I should do? And Owen said the same. He said, you need an apprenticeship. Like, you could continue doing this for 20 years, you're not going to progress. You'll always be a race car mechanic. Yes, you could go to McLaren, but don't get me wrong, there are people in Formula One, mechanics, that aren't qualified. Yep. But my mentors at that time, they were saying you need to get qualified. So,
yeah, what they're saying is you're not going to travel doing that lifestyle for 40 years. And when you come out of it, what are you going to do? And it's being an unqualified mechanic is going to hold you back as far as pay if you got a job, but also very hard to start your own business without that ticket.
For sure. So I spoke with Owen, and the Giltrap group was the first door I knocked on. So they were sponsoring us and had a great connection with them. And
so is there no opportunity within a race team to do an apprenticeship? You have to be in a shop,
dealership environment. Yeah, like it's super tough because being a race car mechanic, it's like you're specializing in race cars, and like to do your apprenticeship, you need to be able to like service air conditioning or like rebuild a so-and-so, but you can't necessarily do that on a race car.
Race cars can be a little bit more specialized to you look after that corner of the car as well, I suppose. So you know how to do that corner of the car really well, but you can't rebuild the engine from scratch and the transmission.
Yeah, for sure. So I spoke to Giltraps, and Volkswagen had an apprenticeship, and I was 21, 22 at this stage. Is this painting a good picture? Can you see my life?
I'm feeling the picture.
We're not even having to ask questions. This is rare. We're just sitting back listening to the story.
Yeah, this is good.
Maybe we should have got the beers.
Don't tempt me.
So yeah, 21, 22, signed up with Volkswagen, full apprenticeship, all paid for by Volkswagen, which was pretty cool. Yep. Started. I didn't realize the impact it would have mentally being older doing an apprenticeship. Because you look at it, right? When you're your average Kiwi, drop out of school, get an apprenticeship, start your apprenticeship, 17, 18, you're fully qualified by 22, 23, right?
Yep.
But I had done it the opposite. I'm 21, 22, starting an apprenticeship, which is fine, but it was kind of like weird in a way where it's, you know, people knew who I was and who I'd worked for and done all this crazy motorsports, and they had high expectations of me, and I didn't know the basics of servicing or basics because I had gone pinball straight to the top, right? Working on some pretty cool race cars. So spent 3-4 years with Volkswagen. Some interesting challenges. In that time, I was still doing motorsport. So in the weekends, I was still away racing, still working for like Owen and Stephen Giles. In that time, got the phone call to run a Ferrari over at the Bathurst 12 Hour. That was very unique. 2 weeks before the Bathurst 12 Hour, with their head mechanic literally dropped out. He said, I'm going through some personal things. I can't come to Bathurst. So I pretty much got the phone call 2 weeks before of that.
As the head mechanic, or?
As the head mechanic.
Oh, you're the head mechanic,
cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so massive opportunity. I didn't know I was going to be the head mechanic, and then I arrived, never seen the car before. First time I ever saw it, you probably saw the video when it rolled out of the, and the first thing I actually thought to myself was, oh yeah, it's red.
Yeah.
Of course, it's Ferrari.
Is that the first Ferrari you'd worked on too?
Yeah, first Ferrari. I'd worked on some pretty interesting cars, and they just become nuts and bolts at the end of the day. They're all wheels, they're all a brand. At the end of the day, they just need to go really fast.
That's what I loved about watching it. I'm like, yeah, race car. You know,
Yeah.
you're beating them with hammers and you're cutting things with hacksaws, and it's like, it's not about keeping this thing pretty. It's about being fast and getting it back on the track.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So we might just go on a little journey about the Bathurst 12 hour.
please
That
do.
was a very interesting position because the guy actually won Lotto.
Oh, yeah.
His name's Gerald Trass, and he won the $22 million.
Yep.
And basically put a race team together. And one of his goals was he wanted to go to Bathurst. So the guys I knew put the team together and basically bought all these Ferraris and basically off to Bathurst.
Because I googled the Trass name and the Trass Family Trust and all this stuff. So is this the one from T. Kofara who won it and then basically blew it all and has nothing now, or has he got a bit of money still?
I don't know I don't know where he's at now, but I think it's along the lines of that.
Like brought cars for his mates and was paddock bashing them all together and all sorts of stuff, or
I think that was that the
Might be
guy
another
who
one.
worked at a shopping.
yeah,
I think,
might have
yeah.
been another one.
Yeah,
I think that because they were T. Kofara as well, were they?
I think so. Yeah,
I think the same area. So I didn't think that was them. I was like, oh, what was his business?
yeah.
I don't assume you won Lotto.
Yeah.
Someone said that to me the other day when I brought my car. What'd you win Lotto? So, come on, man.
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, cool. What business did they own?
Yeah.
Oh, he won Lotto? Oh, shit, that's unique.
So he literally won Lotto and put a race team together. And
That's all.
I got the phone call 2 weeks beforehand and went over and massive issues and delays. And you did you see the video? The
Oh, I did not see the video. No.
documentary. Basically everything that could go wrong went wrong on a
With the
race car.
car?
Yeah. We had kangaroo jump over the car. We had a driver sick. We had wheel fall off. We had the car overheat. Ended up blowing the engine. But you name it happened.
Wow.
So yeah, it was the tale of so many different things, errors, planning. Yeah, it was just a crazy week.
On that, because obviously a lot happened, car aside, what would it cost to run that event? Like, is that $250,000 to show up there and race that event? Is it $500,000? If you got to get the car there, you got to probably pay to be in the race a substantial amount.
Yeah,
plus the
I'd say
team.
you're probably paying everyone accommodation like turnkey. You wouldn't get much change out of a 300.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought about $250,000.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, definitely. When you add everything up and wages and
This is what people don't realise, They see these cars racing around the track and go, oh man, that's cool. Like my son came to me recently, I want to start racing go-karts. I was like, I love that for you.
yeah,
I don't love that for me. Yeah, because even the cost of running one of those could be $40,000 a year.
yeah, and it's serious stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we actually ended up spending more that week because we blew an engine and then there's damage and then so I think it ended up costing quite a lot for that week.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and engine stuff, you're probably getting $600K by the time you're out
Yep.
of there. And
and that car had to go back to Maranello over in Italy to get like rebuilt and new engine and so
on and off planes and all the rest of it.
yeah. So we spent his money. Yeah, we definitely chewed
What an
through it.
experience.
Yeah.
Nothing like
sounds
spending other people's money.
fantastic.
Yeah. But it was quite scary for me because never worked with a team. I rocked up 2 weeks beforehand, met everyone. You know, what do you do? Who do you? You know, how do we all? So we had to gel pretty quickly, and it was quite scary how much experience we did not have, and you can tell by the chaos of the week.
Your attention looked high on the video.
Yeah, it was the first time I've ever been that sleep deprived that I had to put an L and a right on my hands because I forgot left and right. Like I was that tired.
That explains why the wheel
Wow.
fell off.
No comment.
He wrote that on after the wheel came off.
Yeah. So yeah, that was a pretty cool week, and it was cool. Like that documentary's been quite important to me because even my family or my sister or friends don't actually know what I do. Like,
Yeah.
you know, they were like, "Oh yeah, Daniel like works in a race team," and they're like, "Okay, so what does Daniel do?" And they're like, "Oh, he just takes the cars everywhere and fixes them and cleans them." And
It looks so glamorous.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just so wonderful.
And instead, you're 1 inch away from the bottom of a transmission, trying to pull a fork out of it or a rod.
With L&R on his hands, trying to be like, hang on, am I meant to be doing this?
Yeah. So how do I clean this? Left and right. So yeah, that was pretty cool, pinnacle. So coming back to working at Gill Traps, kind of like 23, 24 years old, finished my apprenticeship. Managed to do my auto electrical apprenticeship as well. At this stage, I met my now wife back then, so she was on the stage.
This was while you're still doing the racing stuff. I was going to ask that because you're working in the office, in the workshop, and then come the weekend you're in a different town with a race team. There's not a lot of time for a relationship there.
Nah, so my dad actually took me aside. I'll never forget that because I never had a holiday for 6.5 years. So, you know, I was racing during summer. You know, all my holiday leave was away over summer. And that's when your summer series is, you know. So I'm racing. That's what I love doing. So, yeah, I was pretty much working 7 days a week for a little bit. And so Dad took me aside. He's like, you should really have a break or a holiday. And I was like, yeah, we'll sort it out. We'll get there.
Yeah. Sleep when you're dead.
Yeah, sleep when you're dead. But I just loved it. Like, it was a passion, and you just enjoy what you do. So yeah, then met my wife back then, which was pretty cool. And she was a nurse, so she was finishing uni. This is kind of like I'm finishing my apprenticeship. She was finishing uni. She was training to be a nurse, and so she got a job at Starship in Peds ICU, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
And I'm kind of wrapping up my apprenticeship. Things are getting pretty serious with my wife. Her name's Nio. And the dream came back. So finished my apprenticeship. Want to go to Formula One, you know.
Got that now. You're still young.
Yeah, still young.
Still good fit. Yeah.
Spoke to Stephen Giles. I'm fully qualified. Did my auto electrical as well. You know, is there still an opportunity? He said, yep. Yeah, if you want to make it happen, it's there. You know. Plus, I've got mates that are in Formula One. Doing the Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand, we steal mechanics from around the world. So,
oh really?
We're brushing shoulders with guys that are doing different series from around the world because in New Zealand summer is like winter. They're off season. So a lot of drivers, quite high end drivers like Orlando Norris, he used to come down to New Zealand and do racing in the Toyota Racing Series. And they used to use it for cheap testing. Like, come to little old New Zealand, pay $200,000, do 5 weeks, 5 rounds, get ready for your European season in GP1 or GP2, you know?
That's what I was going to say. I wouldn't imagine that the guys from Formula One even the mechanics, would see much advantage in coming to New Zealand for whatever they may have earned for those races. But maybe there was enough money there to
Cheap
make it worthwhile.
Yeah, they used it. Like Lance Stroll came down a few years ago, and he'd bring his own mechanics. So like I got to work with certain mechanics, and you get to know each other, and you all have that common interest. So you keep in touch all around the world. So there's always opportunities to get jobs overseas. Yep. A very random story is I looked after a Russian driver. I won't name names. And
boring. We want names.
And he came with a bodyguard.
Yeah.
And did the Toyota Racing Series. And it's not often you bring a bodyguard.
Sounds like an oligarch.
Yeah, don't bring a bodyguard down to New Zealand. And big dude. And I took my boss aside and I'm like, you know, what's... And I was working with the driver, you know. And I said to my boss, Stephen, I was like, what's with the bodyguard? And he was like, his father owns a portion of the Russian railway lines, and he's involved. And this kid's on one of the top 10 in the world to be kidnapped. I was like,
oh,
all right, cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Who's going to kidnap him in little old New Zealand?
Yeah, could be a weak spot, though, if you want him that badly.
Yeah, you never know.
It's top 10.
Yeah, it's pretty up there.
Yeah, and so I didn't... obviously, there's a bit of a language barrier. So I'll never forget, we actually won a race, and we down at the podium, and popped a cork, came over and it hit the bodyguard in the head.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he was like looking around, and he like looks at me and he's like, "What was that?" And I was like, "How do you explain a cork?" And he's like looking at me and I'm looking at him.
You're going like this to him.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and he was like, and he figured it out, and he was like, "Oh, cool." But where I'm going with this was one of those unique times in my life where we had the end of year wrap up party, and the party was pretty boring. Everyone was being very mellow, and Dan, being Dan, was like, "We need to change this up. We need to do something different." So I challenged a Russian to a vodka drinking competition.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Little old,
I was wondering if the vodka was going to be involved. So
yeah, and so
you got schooled?
yes.
You're trying to find a sense of humour.
Never been so sick before in my life.
Yeah, vodka will get you.
Yeah, and me being very young and naive, and I think we were in like Manfield,
So
Palmerston.
this is the racer, not the bodyguard.
No, this, the both of them in
Both.
the end.
Yeah,
Both of them were
good,
just
yeah.
going for it, and he just pulled out $1,000 and like put it on the bar and was like, just pointed to the bottle, and she's like, "Oh, I can't give you the bottle. You can only do shots." And he's like, and I'm like, I was like, "I think he wants the bottle." And I was like, "You just hold the bottle and just pour it." Passed over $1,000, and she's like, "Oh, it's not that much." Like, it was just one of those unique moments
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
life where you're just like, this guy's seen some shit.
I love that wealth though.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people are like, oh, there's too much money, and it's like it's insignificant to them. It's like, here's
Yeah.
a grand, I'll have the bottle.
Yeah,
That'll
Yeah.
do. That sounds fair.
yeah. And this Kiwi bartender was like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah. The rest of it's a tip, babe.
yeah, just enjoy it. So, yeah, it was just very unique time. So, yeah, what I'm getting at is work with some real interesting random people from
Yeah.
around the world, and you meet those contacts, and there is those opportunities to go overseas. And we don't realize that they really love Kiwis, like Kiwis that can-do attitude. We do strive really well overseas, especially in the motorsports industry where, you know, the car's crashed, you know, we've got an all-nighter ahead of us, let's just get it done. Like, let's just sort it out, and they love that.
No siesta.
Yeah, yeah, just make it happen. So
Yeah.
where I'm getting at now is there was kind of a tipping point where it was, do I go to F1 or do I stay in New Zealand?
And you're in love at this point.
Yeah, fallen in love. She's the one, fairy tales and lullabies. And it was kind of like, man, here I am again. Like, here's the dream, but stay in New Zealand because Naya's pretty cool. She still is pretty cool. And Giltrap's actually heard that I was looking at leaving. Like, word got around that Dan's going to get out of here. And they actually said at that stage, McLaren Automotive in Auckland had just opened.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, said to me, I also encouraged it because I saw an opportunity. And I was like, basically we came to an agreement, like, how would you feel about staying in New Zealand, working for McLaren Automotive, still working on supercars, still getting aware of the McLaren name, still brushing shoulders on some pretty cool cars. And then it was like, I get to stay in New Zealand, I get to be with my girlfriend, get to work for McLaren Automotive, and I still get to go racing throughout New Zealand and in Australia. And I'm like, you know, this is pretty cool. Like, let's do it, you know. And a few reasons being is like, I spoke to my mates in Formula One and like where they were compared to where I was. And once again, in the back of my mind, I was like, you know, they're not qualified. They've got incredible stories. But I could just see they're just going to do that for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And
And when they come back, they got to start from scratch. They
Start.
still got to buy their first home and do this. And do
Yeah.
that and
And yeah, that lifestyle's awesome. But yeah, once again, you miss out on motorsports becomes a religion.
I think it's it's great, but you got to be selfish. Like, you got to put yourself before whatever you may see your future as. Do I see myself happily married with children? If the answer is yes, then is this the right course for me? Or if it's like, no, I'm going to be single for the rest of my life and just travel, and then great, take that opportunity, jump on that plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, where do you see yourself? Do you see yourself dying old with your darling? Then maybe it's not the right course at this point in time.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not what I would do, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but like there are guys in motorsports that have been doing it for years and years, and they've got like kids in Australia and kids in the States, and you know it just gets messy, but they want to focus on
a lot of one night stands. And
yeah, and you know, and that's fine. That's their decisions, and but that wasn't me. I was like, man, I want to have the house, and you know, want to have a business, and want to you know have kids, and that's more me. So yeah, started working at McLaren Automotive in Auckland.
So what year did that open? Do you remember?
Now you're asking the big questions.
Or years ago, like 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it must have been probably about 10 years ago, actually.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, because it was very similar time my wife came on the scene. McLaren Automotive opened in New Zealand. Yeah, probably.
So around the time that was it the 12.4C or whatever, like that sort of would have been the new models
McLaren
coming
12C.
through.
Yep. So that came on board. So yeah, started working for McLaren Automotive, which was pretty cool. Like, you know, I'll never forget when they gave me a McLaren T-shirt and they're like, you know, here you go, welcome. I was like, oh man, like this is so cool. Like, yeah,
It's a lot cooler working for McLaren than Volkswagen. Just to clarify it, it's quite. I mean, the doors go like this.
Yeah.
I mean that alone.
Yeah. It's it was a real like pinch yourself moment. I probably felt like I didn't deserve it. Like I always was like why me? Like, but they did take notice of I was away racing every weekend, like brushing shoulders with XYZ, and you know that does speak values with you put the time and effort in.
Yep.
Sorry about that. One of the cameras just stopped. So yeah, McLaren 10 years. The doors go.
Yeah.
Where were we?
Yeah. Pretty cool. So yeah, been working for McLaren for a while. Just crazy adventures in that department. Like training's important with McLaren, so they'd fly me over to Singapore. Went over to Woking, over to the factory, over in just near London.
Yep.
And so spent probably like 3 weeks at the factory.
Any factory tour's got to be cool. It's so high on my list of things to do.
Yeah. And especially like for people that don't know the McLaren story with Bruce McLaren in New Zealand, like originating from New Zealand and coming from Remuera, and started with, you know, downhill racing, and then kind of branched
Downhill?
Not downhill, hill climb, sorry.
Yeah.
And
So not mountain biking, going up hills.
No, not back then. Back then.
Leadfoot Festival stuff, yeah.
Yeah. And then branched over and really took off in Formula One. So it was kind of cool, like being a Kiwi coming from New Zealand, going over to the factory. And I was pretty fortunate to meet Amanda McLaren, which was Bruce's daughter. And she kind of like took me aside and was like, you know, you're from New Zealand, and like they gave me a little special pin to put on my suit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was kind of like.
So she works for McLaren to this day?
Yeah, so she's part of like doing the tours and
the history
hospitality.
Should understand it.
Yeah. So it was very unique. You know, there was a group of us, and the group went forward, and Amanda McLaren grabbed me and was like, just had a chat about New Zealand stuff, and I was like, man, this is crazy. Like Bruce McLaren's daughter. Like,
Yeah.
Here I am, 25, 26.
Because a lot of people listening probably still won't have any idea who Bruce McLaren is, but he was called the Flying Kiwi, wasn't he? And to this day, like the McLaren Senna, for those that have seen them, with the big crazy wing on the back, like they're still painting the Kiwis on those as they come out of the factory. It's a spec, but a lot of people around the world have got a little Flying Kiwi on the side of the wing of their McLarens, which is pretty cool for little old NZ.
So unique, and not many people know it. And it, so yeah, did lots of training. Lots of track days. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, track days
were
good.
pretty crazy. I was fortunate to be over at Goodwood, so
Oh wow!
we did a track day at Goodwood. And
Did you get drive up yourself?
Yeah, and I'll never forget. So before I left, you have to sign a waiver to say, hey, we're going to Goodwood. You're going to be driving a $1,000,000 car. Because I was under 30, there was no insurance. So my manager was like, Dan, this is very unique because you're under 30. There's no insurance. And I was like, sweet. So half like $1 million race car. Yeah, cool. They said, don't crash it. I was like, cool. I'll try not to.
Yeah.
Trying to tell a 25-year-old not to crash a $1 million car.
What was the car you're in?
It was a 650 McLaren.
Oh, yeah.
So a decent amount of power.
Yeah.
And so we did the track day introduction and, you know, learn about driving and how fast you can go and push the limits. And it was my turn, went in. Oh, shit, it's left-hand drive. Oh, shit.
Paddle shift, but still you're on the wrong side of the
Yeah,
car.
I was like, oh, man, like I'm on the, and like you just hop in and your vision and you just feel completely off. And in the back of your mind, do not crash this $1 million car. We're at Goodwood, and like, my gosh, and pretty incredible. So
is it quite narrow?
Yeah.
It looks narrow going up it. So I've got a day at Leadfoot Ranch in February where we've got the whole driveway to ourselves for a whole day.
Nice.
So we're going to be banging up and down that. And I've looked at a couple of clips. I'm like, oh, God, it's literally
narrow.
a driveway.
Yeah.
Like if you got a tyre on the side.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll be fine. But yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just, especially if you like in that circumstance for yourself, you're in someone else's car, one. So that's always daunting in itself because you don't want to damage someone else's car and then you learn it's got no insurance.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay.
And like the driving instructor was like, you can go faster here. You go faster. And I'm like, I know that.
Yeah.
I know what this car can do.
Yeah.
But I'm good. But I did fang it and take it for a good spin. And I saw where Bruce McLaren actually died. My instructor was like, I was like, is that where Bruce died? And he's like, that is the most strangest thing anyone has ever asked me. And I was like, I'm from New Zealand. Like it's just interesting to see where he died. So yeah, kind of.
So just pausing on that. So this is an opportunity to drive in a race car. Was that the first time you had a race car, or in all these years of pitting for the race cars, you had quite a few opportunities to put them on the track yourself?
Yeah, at Goodwood, this was a pure road car. So this was the 650 road car.
Okay.
I've had some opportunities to drive the race car, but I was definitely like, nah.
So you never took it up?
Nah, never took it up because I just know the cost involved if you ever damaged it. And like, I knew how to fix it if I broke it.
So you'd put it on a trailer or something and that's about it? Or you wouldn't even go... You'd move them in and out of shops and stuff?
Yeah, move them out of shops.
On the track?
Yep. There was once we did a gearbox in a Porsche and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and I wanted to make sure it was right. And so I was like, stuff it. I'll just take it for a quick blat. And yeah, that's probably about it. But yeah, haven't done much behind the seat. Which
is quite interesting, right? You got such a career around cars, but very limited seat time, and it's the passion of cars that brings you to it. But you're just touching the cars, working in the environment, but you're not actually behind the wheel, which is where you'd think you'd want to be. Because I see myself as this is why I haven't gone into racing. I love cars. I love driving. Like I'm driving this weekend all day long.
Yeah.
You know, I've had my car 2 months and done 7,000 Ks in it, which is unheard of for supercars.
Yeah.
But for me, I'd love to race and I love the idea of racing, but I don't love everything that you're being so passionate about, which is stopping your life on a Wednesday and getting the car ready and preparing it. Like that's what kept me out of racing because, you know, of the family and other things as well. But I just can't see myself giving up that much of my life for the few hours you're on the track.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a saying, what happens in the workshop, you know,
stays in the workshop.
Yeah, or like
True. Not like that though.
Yeah. You know, preparation is key. So like what happens before you win on race day. So that was kind of like where I got the kick was like here I'm shaping these drivers' futures. I'm in tier 1 motorsports, like the Mitch Evans, the Simon Evans, the Nick Cassidy, the Earl Bammers. I'm surrounding myself with them and like I'm a part of their career. Like that's where I got my kick, where I'm like far out. Like I'm helping these kids get to Formula 1 or, you know, get to GP2 or GP1 or Formula E. Like it's pretty cool that I've been a small part to be able to help, and that's where I get the kick. And probably in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, I'll never make it as a driver. Like I don't have the bank account, and I'd probably just be able to have like a little Mini or something and spin around the track. But
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's more fun to drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow.
Exactly.
So that's cool. Okay. Well, that's it. No, that's good. That's good to know. So yeah, from there, McLaren experience. You've been through the tour.
Yep.
You've seen where Bruce McLaren passed.
Yep. Which is random.
I didn't actually know that he passed. Can you tell me the story of that? Like,
Yeah,
So did he crash a car there? And that's how he...
Yeah, so he was at
Wow.
Goodwood,
Yep.
and they were actually testing. You need to watch the Bruce McLaren movie.
Yeah.
They were actually testing a portion of the race car, and it was literally at Goodwood back in the day. It was compulsory to stop for lunch at midday, and it was about 11:30, so last run before lunch. And they made an adjustment to the rear wing, and Bruce was like, "I'll go out and test it," and unfortunately that part broke, and literally put him into a 360 and hit a barrier and died on impact.
Oh, no.
And he was like younger than me, so he was early 20s, I think. Yeah, he was very young.
Was he that young?
Yeah, he was pretty young. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
Holy.
and so that was kind of like, whoa, he's such a talented driver, like engineer, race car mechanic, and driver all in one. And then so
Which is a real, coming back to what you did for a living. That one part, or that bolt in the wheel on properly, or something like that, is someone's life that you're playing with when they're out there, right? So it's check it twice, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and like we're pushing the boundaries of engineering, and like we're trying to get that last percentage out of a car, and like that's why you have to be so careful and cautious, and like knowing what you're doing, and because you do have someone's life and someone's career, and it's can be pretty daunting. And I asked Stephen once, I said, do you still get nervous? And he said, yeah, I still get nervous. If you ever lose that, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Like, you got to have that.
Keeps you human, grounded.
Sure. Exactly. So, we came back from McLaren, got engaged, been at McLaren for a while. My wife has been an ICU nurse for a few years. We were basically like ships in the night, like flatmates.
You would be.
Should do night shift, I'd be working for the day. It just wasn't the best environment, and we were kind of like, man, we need to make a change here. Like, we've both got two awesome careers, but it's just not tracking how we want. At that time, we were wanting to buy a house, but couldn't quite afford the $2 million North Shore house, back then. So we made a decision to move out of Auckland and move down to Hawke's Bay, like back home for a while.
Sure.
Had some like opportunities down there, and buy a house as well. So our intention was like shoot down there, buy a house at a decent amount, and like cash up our KiwiSaver, and then kind of go from there. So did that, moved down, spent about a year and a half, and that's when I got into sales. So I worked for Toyota. Which is kind of like doing your apprenticeship in sales when you work for Toyota, and that was awesome. Like, absolutely smashed it in sales because I had the mechanical background, and just having the right attitude, and knew what to say or what to do, or learnt the hard way. And Toyotas sell themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they walk in, they know what they're like.
Yeah.
It used to be pretty bad. Like, you could see them walking in and be like, Toyota Corolla, done.
Yeah. Gumboots on. He's a Barry Crump man. Hilux, let's go.
Yeah, Hilux SR5, probably in white. Got one in stock. So that was like, spent a year and a half kind of like doing my apprenticeship in sales. And my wife had like devoted a lot of her career to help my career in McLaren. So like she knew that like I loved McLaren, so she was kind of on standby for her career. She had been in Peds ICU at Starship, which is kind of like the pinnacle in New Zealand in the way of nursing. And that's when it was kind of like, I wouldn't say Hawke's Bay was a backward step. I think it was a sideways step. And then out of the blue, my wife got an opportunity at Royal Children's over in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. You dedicated quite a lot to my career. Let's move to Melbourne. No kids. We're young, beautiful, fit, handsome. Bit like yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of eye contact there with Nick.
Yeah.
Hey, it's that photo you posted
Yeah,
yesterday.
just that photo.
After that photo, everyone's
Gosh,
looking at you a
it's
bit
just-
differently.
Yeah.
Didn't realise you're Wolverine.
Yeah, exactly.
Just awkwardly like, oh.
Practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Calendar coming out next year.
There you go.
So opportunity. We sold the house in Hawke's Bay.
Yeah.
Which this story is quite important because it will come back later on down the track, where we used a real estate agent, did a terrible job, absolutely hated it, did everything I didn't want him to do. I really pissed him off because he was like, oh, you know, your house is worth this much. And I was like, cool. Like, what I want is, I can't remember the numbers now, like 650. I want 650 in the hand. Anything over that, you can have. That's your commission. They're like, yep, the market's hot. We're doing well. We'll get, high sevens. I was like, that's cool. All I want is 650 at the end of the day. And that's, the rest is that in your commission. And the big boss of the real estate company had to like change the deal and everything like that, and like went absolutely against the grain because that's the Dan way.
Could have been $5,000 or it could have been $100,000 that they earned, but
and I just don't like giving $20,000 or $30,000 commission to something. Back then, I was like, oh, I could do myself, could I or couldn't I? Or like, don't have a real estate license, but
don't need to. I sold our first home with our license. Yeah,
there you go.
Can sell yourself.
I've got a story about that. So we managed to get like, in the end he only got like $6,000 commission or something because we sold the house for like $660 or something, and he was just not impressed.
Which quarters bullshit.
Yeah, quarters, because they were the old story. Oh, we're high 750s. Oh, the market's cooled off, and didn't want any of that. So moved to Melbourne. This is kind of like 2017, 2016. My wife's all set up. She's enjoying her job at Royal Children's in Melbourne. Melbourne's a pretty incredible place. You guys have been there?
Yep. 2 or 3 times. I haven't really been too far out of the city. Always been there for like Brisbane Truck Show and stuff like that. So I've always been just up and down the river. That part of it, awesome. As far as the city, nightlife, places to go drink. But I haven't been in a car and been out too far.
Yeah, there's always something to do in Melbourne, eh? Like every night, Saturday night, like there's art shows or there's something to do. So
it's a vibe.
It's a vibe. So my wife's all sorted. She's got a job at Royal Children's and didn't know what I wanted to do. I said I'd just pump fuel at a petrol station. And this is kind of where we deviate a little bit from McLaren, because my wife was like, why don't you speak to Melbourne McLaren? Like go back on the tools, or there's more McLarens in Melbourne. And I was kind of like, I'd been a mechanic for 15, 16, 17 years, and I was kind of like, I wouldn't say burnt out, but I was kind of like, man, I've been there, I've done that.
What else is out there?
What else is out there? And like spending that year and a half with Toyota doing sales, I was like, man, this is cool. Like I can have a lunch break whenever I want. Like, I can dictate my hours. And that's kind of like when I was like, man, I don't really want to be on the tools anymore.
Is it because McLaren's quite intense? Because one question I did have was, when you're working there, what is it like being a mechanic? Like, are there windows where the customers, because I imagine they are quite high-profile customers that want, like, do some of them sit at a window and, like, watch you work on their car? Or what's it like?
No.
Come on, Jason, you know what it's like.
I'll paint the picture for you.
Okay, paint me the picture.
Can I say what I think it's like?
Okay.
To
paint me
answer
the
that?
picture. Paint me the picture.
Most people that have those cars are too busy fucking making money to worry about what's happening.
Okay,
So,
sweet. I don't know.
like, if you look at majority of my friends that have them,
Yeah.
they live in Christchurch. So their car gets picked up on a transporter, taken to McLaren, and comes back to them about 2 months later.
Oh, yeah.
So then there'll be a long time waiting beside that glass window to see what's happening with their car.
Sweet. I've got no idea.
But you could tell me something different.
Yeah.
Like bang on. Like I'd get a phone call, my McLaren's flat in Remuera. Yeah, sweet, cool. And he'll go off to work, and I'll go there and fix the McLaren and jump start it. And so we were a bit like being a mechanic in the race team. We're the guys behind the scene.
Yep.
You wouldn't necessarily. It just happens, gets fixed. And yeah, once again, they're all pretty busy.
I think more people are precious about their fucking Toyota Corolla than the supercar owners are about their supercar. They're just like, just get it fixed and back to me.
I just met a guy the other day when, my business partner's next door neighbour, when the kid kicked over the ball and he had a McLaren in his lounge. Yeah. And he was just telling me horror stories because he bought it before he came to NZ while his house was still being built. And then something happened when his roof went on and his garage got flooded. Something happened, and then they ended up putting it on stilts and building a box around it so no one scratched it through the build process, because they had to have it stored in the garage while they were still under construction. And he just told me nightmare after nightmare with his McLaren. And I was like, man, some of these people must be so particular. And so that's where that question kind of came from. Because I imagine working on that guy's car, it'd be so stressful.
It's a very interesting question. And I had one thing I did struggle with when I was at McLaren, and it's very strange, is I dealt with a lot of people that were dying. So when people got their insurance money, what do you do for an average Joe who gets $500,000 payout?
Oh, is that where a lot of it was coming from?
Yeah, and
I'll do the one thing I always wanted to do. I want to live
buy a McLaren, and so I was meeting ticking time bombs, and like it was quite common, and that's their money, and and you get to know the customers. You go out to dinner with them, and you do track days, and in the back of your mind, you're like, man, like you're full of cancer, you're gonna die, and so that was kind of like. You don't treat them any differently, but it was kind of like very interesting, like a family would honor that, or like, you're dying, here's $500,000 insurance payout. I'm going to go buy a $300,000 McLaren.
My stepdad calls it skiing. He wants to spending kids' inheritance. And he's like, I'm going to go heaps of skiing before I die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Screw the kids.
Yeah, screw the kids, yeah. So yeah, it was actually quite common. Like we'd see it quite often that that would happen, and a real random story for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I never really think of that, but yeah, that does make a lot of sense because my wife and I have come to the, her sister died at 41 and we've just both turned 40, and she's come to this realization that maybe she doesn't need to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week anymore.
Yeah.
And we need to start starting to do more together, more holidays. So we've booked a family holiday to America next year.
Awesome.
And we're already talking about going to Europe for 3 months when we turn 45. Like we're already starting to plan enjoying our lives, and that's probably a lot of the car too. Like I could have brought the car a few years ago, but we waited, we had property and other things going on. We're like, nah, we probably deserve it now. Like now's a good time to do it.
Yeah.
But we're enjoying it. Like it's not, I didn't get to the end of my life, 'cause I might die next year, I don't know, and going, oh shit, I should have. At least we're out there trying to do it now.
But yeah, it was kind of like, it always baffled me because I'm like, why the McLaren now when 20 or 30 years ago, you could have been like, my goal was to have a McLaren. I'm 30 years old. Let's work, save, build a business, and then I can have a McLaren and enjoy it while I'm nice and healthy, rather than like driving around in your McLaren knowing you're going to die.
Yeah, well, I guess they just never had that ambition or goal for their lives until a lottery won, like the race car. Like I never thought I could have this, but that amount of money came into the account. We already have a house. Now I can go and buy that car.
Mm.
Like our guest earlier in the week, we touched on, when you have a life-threatening thing, you're more, because I think we have a tendency as humans to feel like it just keeps going on forever, because you keep waking up, you've got plenty of days, you've still got lots of days, and you just kind of feel like it's still going to be heaps more days. And then once people have a life-threatening thing that happens to them, it just brings the mortality in and go, shit, I could have died then. And so now I need to do something. And then maybe their life dream has always been to start a business and make the McLaren, and they always just put it off. And then finally something happens, like you're going to die in 6 months' time, like, shit, McLaren.
Yeah. So what I'm saying here is everyone just needs to go buy a McLaren,
Yeah. You'd be busy.
You've got to take out some life insurance, some good life insurance, and it's a good start eating biscuits. Yeah.
We know a good auto electrician, you'll need one.
Exactly. The earlier McLarens, they had their teething issues, but now they're a lot better.
Okay. Yeah. So that's cool. So you're in Sydney, Melbourne.
Yep.
Yeah.
Looking for a job.
You're going to pump petrol, you're not sure.
Yep, that's it. I joked about it with my wife and she said that wasn't funny. And just through contacts, I was dead serious.
She still wants to be able to look you in the eyes and get turned on, but...
Yeah, I was dead serious. I was like, imagine like you're in a new place, you don't know anyone, and you're like, man, what can I do? What can I, and I was like, man, I just want to pump gas. Like, just do something random.
Still get to see a lot of cool cars. We talked about that again with the earlier guests, and I've worked in the service station. Like everyone with a cool car needs gas. Yeah. So you're still around them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but me being me, picked up the phone call, rang some people I knew, and Mercedes-Benz Touareg, kind of caught up with them, and they offered me a real interesting position, which was called a product specialist, which was the difference between sales and service. They really utilised my mechanical background and my limited sales experience. And so they created a role which was quite cool. It was the first to ever roll out in Australia, and I was fortunate to work quite closely with Mercedes-Benz head office and report back to them every quarter on how it's going, what changes I'd make. Because you've probably seen this in the car dealership world, there's a real divide between service and sales. Like,
it's us versus them.
Butt heads, you know. They sell the car, oh, that's a service problem. Oh, that's a sales problem. Oh, that's, you know, it's a game of tennis. And the customer goes, I just want my car fixed. Like, you know. And so I was the kind of in there to help the customer. And it was a very interesting setup. Like, Toorak sales department was like 2 kilometers away from each other. So there was sales and service. So it was the customer.
A real divide.
Yeah. So it was kind of like in Toorak, there's not much space. So that's how it was kind of set up. So they put me in the sales department. So I was customer facing. I was getting the backlash. I was getting the unhappy customers. I was just, you know, getting it front and center, which I loved. It was quite different.
Is that love with sarcasm, or you actually loved it?
I actually did love it because, like, what the issue was is customers weren't educated. So they weren't educated on what they had bought or the features or a proper handover or not understanding what they've bought. Like, you've just bought a C63, which has 600 horsepower, which you're going to chew through tires and brakes. And why are my brakes squealing when I drive around a city going from traffic light to traffic light? Mr. Customer, you have bought a road-registered race car, literally. I was like, your brakes are this big. It has not had a heat cycle. You need to drive your car. Go out to Geelong.
Yeah.
Go for a big drive.
Used to always piss me off, even in the RS4, I'd be going through the mountain.
Yeah.
At least carbon ceramics don't do that. So
So my sales manager or my dealer principal used to call me the Swiss Army knife because, like, you know, if there was a problem, it used to be like, oh, go to service or like go to, but I was able to like actually re-educate the customer.
Yep.
And then I was able to sell cars as well. My role wasn't to sell cars, but I naturally was selling cars because people wanted to talk to the person that had the mechanical knowledge or like, what am I actually buying? You know.
Did that role turn into? Sorry.
No, you go.
Did that role turn into a driver training? Because obviously the handover of that car and actually explaining to them the features and why does it lose traction when I put my foot down? Because I got a race car, mate.
Yeah.
What's that shutter? That's the traction control kicking in. Like little features like that. That when you buy it for your 70-year-old nana to drive around in, it's probably not the right car.
Yeah. And like that's. I sold a lot of cars where I actually said to some people, I was like, I don't think this is the right car for you. And they're like, excuse me?
Yeah.
Do you know who I am?
Because of status, right? They're like, I want the best because I'm wealthy versus actually I need the best car for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you could tell the type of person or what kind of car they want. And so I had this natural ability of like meeting customers and be like, yeah, man, C63 is a pretty bad car, but like, yeah, service is high. You got brakes, XYZ. And, it was good. We did a lot of driver training. Well, not necessarily driver training, but I'd do a lot of test drive with customers. And one of my highlights was managed to sell quite a few G63s. They were like my favorite car to kind of sell.
Yeah, because I'm 400k.
And I used to be really cheeky, like real cheeky, and be like, because I knew people buy a G63 because Kim Kardashian had a G63. They want a G63 status symbol. And I always be like, oh, so what do you like about G63? And they'd be like, it's a G63. And you'd be like, cool. Do you know like V8 twin turbo? Like this is the ultimate off-road vehicle. And they're like,
doors go bang when you shut.
Yeah. Like,
and that was when it wasn't a great road car. Like the new model is actually, I haven't driven them, but from what I've heard, great road car. A couple of mates have the new model.
Yeah.
The old ones were like a absolute tractor still, you know, like an old Land Rover Discovery to drive, and people like full status. You could have been driving around a Range Rover in full comfort, but instead they're in this wobbling box going down the road, square, most.
Sounds cool though. Sounds really cool.
It does
sound the part. So it was so awesome spending that time at Mercedes-Benz, and like life was just incredible. We had bought a new house. like brand new build. Little man arrived as well. So Arthur was born back in 2019, kind of like just before COVID happened. And that's like when our whole world kind of got tipped upside down when COVID kind of hit Melbourne. Like we got smashed, man. Like we did 9 months of lockdown, in and out, suburb lockdown, and and we were just getting hammered. And
some of the worst in the world, Melbourne.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, we're in lockdown, we're out of lockdown, we're in, and sat down with my wife and we're like, what do we do? Do we stick it out? Like, we're so set up here, grandparents are missing Arthur.
Had you brought a home there, or you had brought a home?
Bought a home, yeah. So we bought a new home build, and we'd only been in for like a year and a half, and made this decision to come home like 4 years ago now. And tough call to make, because like, man, I had the dream job. Like, we'd go to wineries, take customers, drive days, track days.
The track days are good. I've done a couple of AMG track days here with the, what do they call that crew that goes around?
There's Downforce.
Yeah,
and the AMG track
great
show.
So they're all washed up race car drivers, and they all come together.
Yeah,
sit in the passenger seat, and I'm a better driver because of it. Yeah, and I've done a couple of them, and they're like, you might not realise, but you're just doing that, and I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And what that was for me, for one of them, I was used to driving like old Corollas and stuff with heaps of slop in the steering wheel. I'd be in a corner kind of just doing a little bit of this.
Yeah.
And they're like, you don't need to do that. That feeling you've got, you're creating that, because the cars are so direct now. And I was like, oh. Yeah. That was just like a habit I'd picked up from like driving these old clunkers with slop that like this.
Yeah. Big steering wheels.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, that's cool. So they're awesome. And the other thing that most people should do, and no one ever actually does, but you do on those days, is drive 100 Ks and stand on the brakes as hard as you can, and actually see how long it takes you to stop your car. It might be further than you think, so maybe you should pull back from that car that's in front of you. Yeah. Little tips like that actually, it is driver training. It's a racetrack and stuff, but it gives you a real understanding of what your car's capable of, so that you don't end up in an accident.
And it's a very interesting analogy, or a system that McLaren actually set up. We all know the saying, with power comes great responsibility, right? The P1 McLaren, you've probably heard of the P1 McLaren. It is like the ultimate supercar. It's around $4 million. It's got an electric side, V8,
twin turbo. Part of the Holy Trinity.
It is the ultimate. What they did is they actually set up on purpose that if you want to put it in race mode, they could have made it happen in 4 seconds, but they made you wait 45 seconds.
For it to lower the suspension.
And the psychology behind it is you're changing your state where you're like, this car's turning into a beast. And when you're at a traffic light, your mate's next to you in your V10 Audi, and you go, it's on, you can't just press a button and within 4 seconds, you've got a beast. So they made it 45 seconds. So you should consciously know the car's going down, the wing's changing, that you are turning this car into
traction controls
a
off.
Beast.
Then what happens if
you versus God?
Yeah. Then what happens if you're in a swinging contest and you just want to win the race?
You would anyway, because you're in the P1.
Oh, okay.
Just give them a 45-second head start.
And P1's a pretty quick car.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between putting into that sport mode and not in a drag race?
Probably like 400 horsepower.
Wow. How about in time?
In time?
Just like so 400 horsepower extra.
Yeah.
Wow.
What are they? They're not quite 1,000, are they?
No, I think they're around 800 off the top of my head. But you just can't drive around in race mode.
Well, they wouldn't be 400 on that without it. So they would have been 600 or something.
You're going to quiz the Swiss Army knife, bro?
I think it's time.
Yeah.
Because at 400 horsepower, I'd leave it for dust if that was the case in my car. And there's no way I'd leave that for dust, even if it was just in its normal sport mode.
Yeah, maybe a bit over-exaggerating 400 horsepower. But it would change the downforce and turn it into a complete beast.
The biggest difference is that all traction's off. You're in race mode, right? So it's you versus God.
Yeah.
So that thing goes sideways, you better know how to drive.
Yeah. It's
and McLarens aren't four-wheel drive. My car's four-wheel drive. It saves your life. That thing sideways, you're Paul Walkering it.
Yeah. crazy car. I remember
Sorry.
driving it around in Auckland, and like, it's actually a dangerous car to drive because like people video you. I remember driving along the motorway, and there was a kid hanging out the door or out the window trying to video the McLaren, and I'm like, this is actually dangerous, like swerving into your lane, and
Yeah, I even get it.
yeah,
People love just anything like that.
and like I actually used to have a GoPro in the car because like if anything happened, like my manager would find out before I even get back to the workshop, like, you know, social media and McLaren's whacked something or done something. And
So can we say whose P1 you were driving?
if you rattle off some names, I could nod.
We'll do it after the show. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
He recently just sold his F1 McLaren.
Oh yeah. Anyway, we'll carry on. We won't have long awkward pauses while I'm trying to think of who owns what cars in the country.
So, yeah, where I'm at is COVID's just coming out of lockdown again in Melbourne, and sat down with my wife. What do we do? We're going to move home. Sweet, primo. Need to sell the house. Cool. Next door neighbor is a real estate agent, and he was like the man for the area. Like his face was everywhere. And so I spoke to him. I was like, hey, want to do a quick sale and head back to New Zealand. He's like, oh man, like everyone's coming out of COVID. Like it's been a lot of divorces. Like, you know, everyone wants to sell their houses. Like, you know, grab a seat and wait, mate. Like we're pretty busy. And I was like, man, stuff you. Why don't I just sell it myself? Like, so we ended up like selling privately. Like one of the highlight or pinnacle in my career was kind of like selling a house, because I was kind of like, man, this is just bonkers. And how we sold the house was everyone was so negative about COVID, but we turned it around and was like, you're only allowed 4 couples in an hour every 15 minutes. So when people would ring and be like, oh, your house was for sale, like I used to say, you know, can't remember the name, but I was like, you know, Mr. Customer, all due respect, like where are you in the buying process? You know, due to COVID, I can only have 4 couples per hour once on a Saturday, and people just used to rattle off all the information they shouldn't. Hey, I'm pre-qualified for 800,000. We're good to go. We've got a month-to-month rental. So like I'm pretty much good to go.
Yeah.
Okay, I really appreciate it. Is there anything holding you back from purchasing? Huh? And, you know, another couple, oh yeah, we're just, you know, window shopping. Cool, they're out. So literally I would have 4 pre-qualified people that were ready to pull the trigger when we had the open home, because due to the restrictions, you could only have an hour, and that was like monitored and you had to log it and all that. So we managed to like sell the house within like 3 weeks or something, which was pretty primo. And
did you come out on the right side of it?
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, yeah, we made some good coin, which was awesome.
Yeah, nice.
And the next door neighbor, the real estate agent, he was just like, oh, how did you do it? Or like, how did you, you know, did a quick sale? You obviously sold
Gave it away. Yeah.
You
Sold
gave it
too
away,
cheap.
or sold it too cheap, or
We all say that though.
yeah,
Oh, you sold it in 2 weeks, too cheap. Should have been
Did
too
you tell
dear.
him the price?
yeah. Told it, and it was all like logged and everything. And
Yeah.
I said, well, I looked at what other houses had sold, but there had been no data because we'd been in lockdown for
Yeah,
know
yeah.
6 months, and
We'd never had so much money in the economy with all the printing going on, so that was new.
yeah,
So it was the start of inflation, or like hyperinflation.
exactly. So basically, moved back to New Zealand, and here kind of comes the business element of where I'm at now. Do you want to go down that road, or what would
Yeah.
you?
Tackle that road.
Yeah, we'll touch on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What are you doing now?
Yeah, what am I doing now?
So you came to Tauranga straight away.
Yes, so my wife is from Tauranga here,
Oh, she
and
sounds like a legend.
Yeah.
About time we got something good in the story.
and when we were back in Melbourne, like selling the house, my father-in-law rang me. He was like, "Oh, you know, there's a marine electrical business for sale." I was like, "Oh yeah, nah."
Yeah.
And we like got back to New Zealand, and I just went straight back to what I knew I was doing. People heard I was back in New Zealand, and straight away I was back to Hampton Downs. I was actually building basically supercars or muscle cars in Hampton Downs, and they were getting shipped off to Australia. So I was basically back to what I know, back to what I was comfortable, back to New Zealand, doing straight into what I know. And then my father-in-law rang me again. He's like, "Mate, just spend a week with this dude. this marine electrical business here in Tauranga. I was like, yeah, all right, I'll give it a go. Like, grew up on boats, been around boats, like boats, don't enjoy fishing, but like boats.
What kind of boats?
So we had like little runabouts when we were younger, like the Kiwi family. We had like a 17-foot Haynes Hunter and water skiing.
Everyone had a Hayden stuff. Well, not everyone, but that was the boat to have.
The boat, yeah, and so like always around boats, which was cool. And my father-in-law was an ex-boat builder as well, so he'd been in the industry his whole career. And so yeah, fast forward, decided to do a week with the previous owner of the business, and went, shit, this is pretty cool. Like, these are some pretty cool boats, and oh yeah, that's the problem. Oh yeah, that needs batteries, and like it was kind of like, oh, this is cool. Going back to like when I was a mechanic at Gill Traps, I always had this burning desire that I wanted to do something different, or like I knew I didn't want to do the 8 till 5. Like I'd been pretty fortunate in my whole career that I had swept the floors, I became the mechanic, I had worked in sales, I'd worked with finance, I'd worked with marketing, so I saw all these elements of the business where I was able to be like, cool, I've learnt a portion of each one to help towards a business. Still didn't prepare me for the business world, but kind of helped. And so yeah, spent a week with the previous owner and was like, man, this is cool. Like I could definitely do this. He didn't even have an answer phone service. He was very old school.
So there's room for improvement.
The business had been around for like 30 years. And so straight away I was like, this is a project. This is me. We could turn this into something. Like this is
Working.
This is epic. Like I could put the Daniel spin on it. My wife was keen. My wife grew up on boats. She lived on a boat for a while. Like it was just the natural course. Once again, it ignited something different, you know, like, you know, a boat is basically a car, just floats on water, needs an engine, needs alternators. So did a deal on purchasing the business. And the last 3 years has been a journey. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So with the business, there was cash out of your house. You don't have to say that if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Or did you go on the financing, some vendor financing? Like, how'd you get into the business?
So what happened was around when we moved back to New Zealand, house prices were just nuts. If you remember 3 or 4 years ago, like we'd go look at a $700,000 house and be like, yeah, no, cool, yeah, let's make an offer. Goes to auction, 1.1, 1.2. That was just that silly time. And we went and looked at between 5 and 7 houses, and it was just like, man, like it's just not happening. So we decided to buy a business, could generate money. We could reassess in 3 or 4 years' time on buying a house. And we're kind of starting to get to that stage now on looking at buying a house. So yeah, we made a decision to use a portion of the money to buy the business.
Yep.
And that's how we achieved it.
When you brought the business, was it just him himself, or he had some staff?
Just him, and he had a
See that
contractor.
before,
No, that's
Okay.
good.
I know.
That was the same question I had.
Oh, okay. I was like, fuck, did he just say that?
No.
Sorry, guys.
I
Nick just
nodded.
shook his head, and I was like,
No, I
damn
nodded.
it.
I nodded.
Am I not
I was like,
listening?
yeah. I was like, yeah, boy.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
it's just him.
It was him, and he had like a contractor. His name was Roger. So it was awesome. So I worked with him for like 3 months to like see the nuts and bolts, meet the customers, see what he's doing right, see what he's doing wrong. And it was just a mess, an utter mess.
So heaps of upside.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, everything's just like in books with, you know, you got a ruler to like go down the line to see, oh yeah, this customer does that, or was it?
Not even like to that point. He was the worst person to negotiate with. Like, I said to him, do you realize all your knowledge is in your head? And he's like, well, I've worked pretty hard my whole career, so of course it's in my head. And I said, but if you want to sell a business
I need that knowledge.
and you die tomorrow, he's like, I don't get what you mean. And I said, well, you want to sell the business, but I've been in the automotive industry. Yes, I understand the marine, but there's certain little traits or little quirks of marine. So we literally, I had to spend 3 months with him, like getting that information out and writing it down. And like, he didn't have a laptop, didn't have anything. On a Sunday, his wife and himself would sit down and do the accounts all day Sunday. That was their thing on a Sunday, do accounts. Very old school way of doing it. It worked. They made money. But
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
He didn't have something that was saleable. So he's
For
trying to sell something at a price.
yeah,
But he couldn't sell anything because the business wasn't a business. So you managed to give him some money,
yes,
which we won't obviously talk about on here. But yeah, that money would have been a lot more had there been systems and stuff.
for sure. And what we've achieved in like 3 years with the business is like, I was thinking the other day, I was like, sweet baby Jesus, we've come a long way. Like the first thing I did day one is like put a voice message service.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
Spicy.
yeah, 1% every day, 1% every day.
100%.
Yeah.
100%, 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, ups and downs, highs and lows, lots of sideways, lots of learning, lots of making mistakes. Wasn't prepared, or yeah, it's been a big 3 years for sure.
Yeah.
Just you've throughout a theme that you've thrown out just randomly throughout this whole podcast is putting the Daniel spin on it.
Yeah,
Tell us about the Daniel spin.
the Daniel spin.
What would that be?
Add a bit of olive oil. The Daniel spin, definitely, like I've always looked at things differently. I don't know if that's how my brain's been wired, or like I hate hearing no, or like the real estate agent, you can't sell a house during a pandemic. You know, you won't get a real estate agent. I'm like, that's cool. So how do we make this work for us? Yes, we're in COVID. Everyone around us is like, you won't sell a house. Like, don't sell it privately. Get a real estate agent. And I'm like, let's look at all the information. I'm very fortunate. I've got a pretty cool wife, a very understanding wife who's helped me make some crazy decisions. But yeah, the Daniel spin, definitely looking at it differently. And like, there's always a way of improving. And that's probably like when I started the business, or when I bought the business in the marine industry, I kind of stirred the pot quite a lot because I'm the new kid on the block. And
you haven't been taught you haven't been taught the way it's always been done.
Yes.
This is the way it's always been done. This is the way we'll always do it.
Yes.
Or this is how we did it at McLaren, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, the customer said 10 o'clock and we arrived at 10 o'clock. Whoa, a tradie arriving on time.
Sure,
They wouldn't
have even cracked a beer by then.
Yeah. And I was just like, so like putting the Daniel spin was just every day just trying to make it better, and like, how can we make the business, I think I've spoken about it with you guys, like automate it. So like the first thing day one with buying the business off that gentleman is like, he was the business. People went to see him. It was his knowledge. He couldn't have holidays. And I remember the previous owner of the business, he said to me, you realize you won't be able to have holidays. I said, say what? And he's like, you during summer, you need to work. This guy didn't know me. He didn't know that like I never had a holiday for 6 years. Like, I don't mind working 90-hour weeks.
Yeah, you just see some fresh-faced little young guys, and his eyes probably like, oh, this cocky guy, he's going to fail. Like,
Yeah.
He doesn't know what he's getting himself in for.
For sure.
I'll
And
take his money because it's time for me to move on.
bang on. And that's kind of his attitude towards it. And that's why we've made some pretty cool changes in the last 3 years. And yeah, highs and lows and ups and downs. But I'm starting to get to a good point in the business now where I've got an understanding, and you never stop learning. So I hope that helps with the Daniel spin.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I just thought, because you obviously done really well in motorsport, and you've done really well at everything you do. And you've mentioned the Daniel spin, so I was like, well, what is it? How does someone emulate?
How do we
their
get
own
a little bit
Daniel
of this
spin?
Daniel spin? Yeah.
Yeah. And like the main thing is like, I've always made it fun. Like, if I'm not enjoying it, then I'm not doing it, you know. You've seen with my videos and my Instagram.
I was just about to ask.
Like if it's not fun, like motorsports, when you're working with a team, someone will know who I am in a team, and like, Dan's here, like it's going to be got a lot of partying, but the serious element as well. Like, we're here to do a job, but like when we stop, we can go party.
When did you start your Instagram?
When did I start?
Yeah.
Started it only 6 or 7 years ago, and we're in Bali, just myself and my wife, and there was a fully fledged Instagrammer, and she asked me to hop out of the pool because she wanted to take a photo. And I was like, there's a few bintangs deep. And
Just swim over to her and pee, make it all yellow around her.
and I couldn't believe what she said, and I was like, no worries, like I'll let you do your photo? I'm a nice guy from New Zealand. And my wife was like, I dare you to like do something very similar to what a pose that she just did. So she hopped out of the water. Daniel, with a few kilos on him, just went up and like pushed my stomach out or arched my back or did something. Even like the bartender was taking photos of me. Like everyone around me was just like, man, this is awesome. Like, you know, because I wasn't doing the generic Instagram.
I've seen
Daniel
your Instagram.
spin.
I'm going to put some photos up in the video for anyone that's not seen.
I'm going to follow your Instagram. So where do people follow this Instagram?
It is hilarious.
And so it kind of just started as a bit of a joke, and then I haven't really done much more of it. But yeah, every time it's, yeah.
My favourite is your face and a whole bunch of flowers floating in the bath.
Yeah.
It's just a picture and there's all these flowers around his face and he's just smiling.
Daniel spin.
Because literally, like, I walked into our hotel room and I was like, man, this is such a beautiful place for a photo. And I was like, yeah, let's do it.
So it started a craze, couple of bintangs and an Instagrammer.
Yep. And then
inspired you to...
It kind of just went from there. If you pass that on.
Oh, there you go. Here's his... It's a very funny Instagram.
So that's the Daniel spin.
Yeah.
Like, you got to make it fun. You got to make it enjoyable. And my colleagues that I work with in the marine business, we're always having fun. There needs to be a certain element of being serious, because our job is you're dealing with electrical and quite a lot of things. So there needs to be the serious and the fun element. And
So you're a fun Swiss Army knife.
fun Swiss Army knife.
There we go.
How to do a jump squat, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to follow him, it's Danny Prince, DANNY _Prince, and yeah, you're going to go
It's
viral.
entertaining.
Some T's and C's.
How many followers you got? You deserve it.
Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So there's my terms and conditions.
Let's get this guy to at least 1,000 followers. Jesus, that's so
That's
good.
it's entertaining.
I'm
So-
following you that. I'm following that.
So the Daniel spin is that. Oh, look at that one with the McLaren in front.
Yeah, so yeah, so
Yeah,
Brilliant.
you got to have fun, eh? Like, in being in motorsports, and you can back me up, the highs are highs and the lows are lows. Like, when you're winning, everything's all gravy, life's good. And when stuff goes wrong or you lose a championship, the lows can be pretty low, like, especially like week after week after week, or mechanical failure, or, you know, it can be pretty soul destroying. So you need to have that fun element, that's for sure.
yeah, for sure. So taking that through to your business. So we'll probably do another podcast with you on the Action Playbook, I think, and really cover off more of the systems and different things you've done in the business and working with us in Action Curve.
For sure.
I think Robin would love to jump on that too and really grill you.
Yeah.
So we won't dive too much more into your business, but if people are looking for your business, how do they find you?
Yeah. We're Tauranga Marine Electrical Services, www.tmes.co.nz. I don't use Instagram. Best way is call me, 027 436 7334. Did I sound like one of those people on
Radio
a plane?
presenters. Yeah. That was a good
Yeah,
ad.
that was good. That's good. You
Thank
can
you.
put that on your Instagram.
Yeah.
That you don't use, but you do. No, that's awesome. Look, it's been cool to hear all that motorsport history and stuff, and learn
you.
where the Daniel spins come from. And for those that do listen to the other podcast, well, hopefully we get you back in here in the next month or so, and we'll get you up on there as well. And
For sure. Let's make it happen.
dive deep into that one.
Yeah.
Anything else, Nick?
No, I'm good.
We good?
Watch
Very
this
cool.
space.
Call it a day. Thanks for coming in.
That's a wrap.
There we go.